Hey, it's Craig. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Canadian History X early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Hey everyone, Craig Baird here. Before I begin today's story, I want to take a moment and ask that you check me out on Patreon at www.patreon.com/CanadaEHX. There are several tiers with great benefits, from ad-free content to t-shirts and other cool stuff. And don't forget, you can also donate directly to the show at www.canadaehx.com. Just click donate. It helps keep this show going. Okay, on with the show.
In 2004, the Austrian Mint minted a 1,000 euro coin that weighed 31 kilograms and measured in at 37 centimeters in diameter. A total of 15 coins were minted, which honored the Austrian Philharmonic Orchestra, earning the nickname of Big Phil. One side featured orchestra instruments. The other side had the great organ of the Golden Hall, found in Vienna's famed Musikverein concert hall. The coins were so large that polishing machines simply couldn't handle them, and each had to be polished by hand. They were the largest coins ever produced. And then Canada said, "Hold my beer." I'm Craig Baird, this is Canadian History X, and today I bring you the story of the big maple leaf that once held a Guinness World Record and the incredible heist that followed. The first Province of Canada coins were struck in 1858 by the Royal Mint in London, England, which produced all of Canada's coins for the next 50 years. That worked, for the most part. Canada wasn't heavily populated at the time, so there was no need for mass production. As population increased, though, and new immigrants arrived in the country, we went from 3.4 million people in 1867 to almost 5 million by 1890. More people meant more coinage. And the idea of a Royal Mint branch in Ottawa then emerged, but the British dragged their feet for over a decade until 1901, when Canada's population was now pushing near 6 million. It took 7 years for the Royal Mint branch in Ottawa to be constructed. And on a momentous day, January 2nd, 1908, Governor-General Lord Grey and his wife Lady Grey activated the press, and a 50-cent coin was struck. It was the first on Canadian soil. Over the next 20 years, the Royal Mint branch in Ottawa expanded. In 1931, Canada signed the Statute of Westminster, which increased the autonomy of the British Commonwealth's dominions. It is often cited as the moment Canada truly became an independent nation. The landmark statute transferred the Royal Mint branch's assets to the Canadian government. In December 1931, the Royal Canadian Mint was established through an Act of Parliament, and since then the Royal Canadian Mint became pretty good at making coins. The Royal Canadian Mint became so good they changed the game in 1982. They produced a series of coins that were 99.99% pure gold. Known as the Maple Leaf coins, they set the standard for gold coins at the time. Did you know there were awards for coins? I didn't until I started researching this episode, but the Royal Canadian Mint has a whole slew of them. The Mint first won the World Coin News Coin of the Year in 1985 for a $20 coin that was minted in honor of the upcoming 1988 Calgary Winter Olympics. From then on, the Mint won 11 Coin of the Years until 2002. They had an incredible winning streak from 1993 to 1998, winning every Coin of the Year, except in 1995. And what happens when you become pretty great at something? You look for a new challenge. And when the people at the Royal Canadian Mint saw that giant coin created by Austria, they decided to create the greatest gold coin the world had ever seen, one that put all others to shame. The Royal Canadian Mint didn't just want to beat the Austrian record, they wanted to blow it out of the water. Royal Canadian Mint's Chief Technology Officer, Shan-Yao Li, had only one thing to say: it's impossible. But the Mint would not be limited. Work began on making the impossible possible in early 2007. For 3 months, the Royal Canadian Mint worked to create a giant gold coin. It was so large that no hydraulic coin press was big enough or powerful enough to strike it. To get around that, they had to create a mold that would be strong enough to handle the molten gold being poured into it, but flexible enough for the coin to be removed after. It took some time to get it right. Multiple casts were poured, scrapped, and melted down, and then re-poured. It became a tradition among employees at the Royal Canadian Mint to watch the coin be poured and removed from the mold. They were finally successful in May 2007, and the brand new coin was a sight to behold. It was 2.8 centimeters thick and 50 centimeters wide of pure gold. The coin was the size of a car tire. It weighed in at 100 kilograms, 3 times more than the Austrian coin. The Royal Canadian Mint really said, go big or go home. One side featured Queen Elizabeth II in an image created by Canadian portrait artist Susanna Blunt. It did not feature a crown or tiara. As the artist described, it was to show the Queen's, quote, maturing dignity. On the reverse side, the coin had a stylized maple leaf created by Royal Canadian Mint artist and senior engraver Stan Whitten. And when I said it was made of pure gold, I meant it. Raw gold is not pure. It contains many other elements from silver to zirconium. The coin was so pure that there was less than 10 parts per million of other elements in the gold. It was the purest in history at 99.999% purity. David Madge, the Royal Canadian Mint's Director of Bullion, said, "We wanted to raise the bar so that we could say the Government of Canada or the Royal Canadian Mint produced the purest gold coins in the world." The coins had a face value of $1 million, but would sell on the market for $3 million each. And as you can imagine, they were not for the average consumer, but for collectors and precious metals. Now 6 coins were produced. 1 went to the Royal Canadian Mint Vault. 1 was sent to the Baird Gold Corporation, another to an Austrian investment firm. 1 went to Queen Elizabeth II. I guess with her face on it, we kinda had to give her one. 2 went to coin collectors in Dubai. Now according to some sources, one of those is now used as his coffee table. That is quite the conversation starter. The coin for the Austrian investment firm eventually found its way to the Bode Museum in Berlin, where it remained there for years. Until 4 men showed up in the middle of the night with a wheelbarrow. The Bode Museum in Berlin is one of the most prestigious museums in Germany. Built from 1898 to 1904 under the direction of Emperor William II, it is part of what is known as Museum Island and is now a World Heritage Site. It encompasses the sculpture collection, the Museum of Byzantium Art, and the numismatic collection, which is one of the most significant collections of coins and metals in the world. There are more than 500 pieces in that collection that date back to the very first coins ever minted in human history, including 100,000 Greek coins and 50,000 Roman coins. In 2010, a new coin was added, which took quite the journey to get there. After purchasing the big maple leaf coin in 2007, the Austrian investment firm hit a bit of a rough patch 3 years later. The head of the company was arrested for fraud in 2010, and to recoup losses, the coin was sold for 3.27 million euros to Oro Direct Sales. The Spanish precious metals company soon got into trouble as well. In a raid, police found evidence of money laundering and illegal trading. But just prior to that, a German entrepreneur by the name of Boris Fuchsmann offered to buy the coin from the company for 3.37 million euros. Almost as soon as he purchased it, the Bode Museum asked if it could be part of their Gold Giants exhibit. And that's how the big maple leaf became the star attraction at the museum. It was a perfect match and press coverage was massive. Who could resist the largest coin ever minted, sitting in one of the largest coin collections in the world? When the exhibit ended, the museum asked Fuchsmann to make it a permanent fixture, and the big maple leaf was finally settling into its new home. For years, people walked through the museum and saw the great coin with Queen Elizabeth II on one side and the maple leaf on another. Thousands admired it, read the plaque detailing its story, and then moved on. Except for one man. A security guard by the name of Denny, last name simply given as W, walked by the big maple leaf every day as he did his rounds. The 20-year-old had started working at the museum in late February 2017. Now, even if you know nothing about coins, it's hard to ignore a coin made out of solid gold. Its imposing size immediately makes one think, wow, this is worth a lot of money. Working at the museum, Denny would admire it, but he couldn't help mentioning it to his former school friend, Ahmed Remo. Ahmed wasn't just a friend from childhood. He also just happened to be connected to one of Germany's most notorious crime families, the Remos. The Remos first came to police attention in 1992 with the murder of a restaurant owner in Berlin. And with an estimated 500 members, it's one of Berlin's most notorious gangs, with a long record of violence, drug trafficking, money laundering, and fraud. Denny's understanding of the museum's security and layout allowed him to hatch a plan with Ahmed's brother Waisi, and their cousin Wassam. They planned to steal the big maple leaf. But soon after Denis began to work at the museum, they hit a little speed bump. In early March 2017, Denis was pulled over by police after filling up his car with gas and taking off without paying. A gas and dash, as they say. As the police officer talked to him, he noticed floor plans for the Baird Museum in the back seat of Denis' car. Further searches found nylon gloves and screwdrivers in the trunk. Now, it wasn't illegal to have any of those things, but that traffic stop would come back to haunt Denis a few weeks later. Now, if you're waiting for some elaborate Ocean's 11 style heist, guess again. These thieves barely pulled this off. In reality, it was more of a miracle. On March 21, 2017, the men arrived at the museum under the cover of darkness. They placed a ladder on the side of the building and climbed up the only second-story window. They removed the security glass over the window with screwdrivers. The plan was to remove the glass and climb down into the employee locker room. And as they removed the bolts, the glass suddenly cracked. The men panicked and fled, but they left their ladder behind. The next day, another security guard noticed the ladder and the cracked glass, but didn't really think anything of it, and just put in a repair order. The repair wasn't a priority, so for 6 days the thieves waited for another chance. But they were running out of time. The thieves knew that the coin was scheduled to move about 3 kilometers away to another museum in Berlin on March 27th. They knew they only really had one shot, so between 3:20 and 3:50 a.m. on March 27th, 2017, Ahmed and Wasim Remo, together with an unidentified accomplice, reached the top of the stairs and speedwalked towards the end of the S-Bahn platform. The 3 figures stepped off the platform, onto the track bed, and over to the service pathway running parallel to the tracks. No passing trains would spot them because they knew that the S-Bahn wouldn't start up again until 4:13 a.m. Beneath them was the Spree River, and ahead of them was the Baird Museum. The 3 thieves arrived at a wall that once belonged to a support structure connecting the Baird to the Pergamon Museum next door. The bridge is long gone, but the wall led to the only second-floor window accessible from the outside. The thieves used the ladder they had left behind, and this time they successfully removed the rest of the bolts with screwdrivers and got inside the open window. They didn't have to worry about an alarm on that window either. Denis had informed them one hadn't worked there since 2013 and had been turned off for the last 4 years. They would have to be on the lookout for one guard, but at the time he would be doing his rounds in another part of the museum. This would be to their advantage, because although there were motion sensors, those were turned off when the guard did rounds to avoid setting them off. And with that knowledge, the men climbed down into the employee locker room, took a skateboard, and you'll see why soon, and then quickly reached the door to the museum. They jammed the door to keep it open and then hurried to the coin room. The thieves walked past priceless coins from human history. They only had one target in their sights, the big maple leaf. The gold coin was protected by a glass case, but the thieves weren't worried. They had a plan for that too. Glass cutting equipment? No. A fancy laser cutter so they could easily grab the coin and escape? No. One thief brought out an axe, and he swung it like Paul Bunyan straight into the glass case. The thick glass case shattered into several pieces, and some pieces were so heavy that they left gouges on the floor which can still be seen to this day. The men then grabbed the 100-kilogram coin and put it on a skateboard they brought with them. The guard was still in another part of the building and the thieves hadn't been heard, so they made their way back to the locker room. And as they did, the hefty cargo bumped into walls, leaving deep cuts in the plaster, and the coin was so heavy that it flattened the tires, leaving marks on the floor. In the locker room, the 4 men lifted the coin up towards the window. No pulley system needed. And with one final push, they shoved it out the window. The coin, worth a fortune, fell to the ground with a dull thud. The men escaped out the window next and climbed down the ladder. Next, the thieves lifted the coin into a wheelbarrow they'd placed near the entry point several days earlier. Now, security had thought nothing of it after the first attempt, and now the men used it to get away from the tracks to their getaway vehicle located in a nearby park on the other side of the River Spree. They placed it in the trunk, and then the men drove off into the night. The robbery of the gold coin the size of a tire took only 16 minutes. At 4 a.m., the guard at the museum walked back into the security room from doing his rounds. He was a recent transfer to the museum, but he was no rookie. He had 8 years' experience as a guard. And when he looked at the monitors in the security room, he saw several doors of the second floor open. And that stood out to him as odd because he was certain he had closed them earlier. He immediately radioed for security backup. One of his colleagues from another museum arrived and saw the tire marks on the floor. Then they saw the walls. They followed this trail into the coin room where they discovered broken glass. The big maple leaf was gone. The guards made 2 phone calls, one to the museum director, the other to the Berlin police. When they rang Berlin police, they stated that a coin had been stolen from the museum. At first, there was some confusion. With 500,000 coins in the collection, how did they know one was missing, and how much would that loss really matter? But when they realized it was the big maple leaf, police sprang into action. They didn't have a suspect, but they did have plenty of evidence. Most of the tools were left sitting where the thieves had left them, along with their DNA. CCTV cameras had captured them at the station. They also discovered a trail of gold flakes leading into the street, which led police to another security camera which caught the getaway Mercedes driving away from the scene. But identifying the suspects would be no easy task, until the police were contacted by informants and were told 3 names: Ahmed, Waisi, and Wissam Remo. As mentioned earlier, the names were familiar to police and they began to monitor communications. Then they raided the homes of key members of the organized crime organization, believing the coin had been broken apart and sold piece by piece. And around this time, police were alerted to Denny's involvement. The patrol officer remembered the man who didn't pay for gas and had museum floor plans in his car. And this led them to monitor Denny's activities. It wasn't long before they saw the young security guard making some very extravagant purchases. He invested thousands of dollars into a bakery, bought a luxury car, and was walking around wearing a necklace worth 11,000 euros. I mean, come on, man. It was becoming clear that Denis was the man on the inside. On July 12, 2017, a raid was conducted on Ahmed and Waisi Remo and their cousin Wissam Remo, as well as on Denis. What police found was overwhelming. Wissam's phone was seized and police discovered he searched for gold prices, equipment for melting gold, and news updates on the heist. But wait, there's more. The camera roll on his phone included screenshots of Google Map directions showing their getaway route. In his apartment, they found gloves with glass fragments. Investigators also uncovered a rare Armani jacket in his possession, clearly identified in security footage. Ahmed's fingerprints were found on a piece of paper listing gold prices, but the most damning evidence of all were the suspect's clothes that had tiny gold fragments on them. The same particles were found in one of the Remos family cars. It was like they were trying to get caught. The thieves may have been terrible at covering their tracks, but the Remo family has a lot of money. They could easily just pay off witnesses and hire the best lawyers in Berlin. In Germany, there are no juries. Evidence is presented to a panel of judges who decide whether to convict or not. The evidence against the 4 men had to be airtight to get a conviction. And the trial began in January 2019 and lasted for 41 days across the better part of a year. Through it, evidence was laid out, experts and witnesses testified. The ex-girlfriend of Ahmed was called because she had previously shared that he had bragged about becoming a millionaire. Unfortunately, as soon as she was on the stand, she recanted her statement. Ernest Pernicka, who is an archaeometrist, became the key witness for the prosecution. He linked the gold particles on the clothes of the men to the gold coin. Court also heard expert analysis of the size and stature of the men portrayed in the CCTV footage, which matched cousins Ahmed and Wissam, both high school dropouts convicted multiple times for past petty crimes. And through it all, the men were not in detention because they were on trial in a youth court. If found guilty, they would face up to 10 years in jail. On February 20th, 2020, a verdict was handed down. Denny was given 3 years and 4 months in prison and ordered to pay 100,000 euros in fines for being the inside man. Wissam and Ahmed were both sentenced to 4 years and 5 months, and they were fined 3.3 million euros, the value of the coin. Waisi, the 4th defendant in the case, and Ahmed's brother, was acquitted of all charges. The prosecution's attempt to prove his involvement proved unconvincing. But now that they were found guilty and were in jail, what happened to the coin? Police never found the big maple leaf. More than likely, it was broken down or melted, so investigators don't expect to ever find it. As for Boris Fuchsman, the man who lent it to the museum, his insurance only paid him 20% of the coin's value. He launched a lawsuit stating the museum was negligent, and that caused his insurance company to increase the payout to 50 cents on the value. However, the other coins minted in 2010 still exist, but they are no longer the largest in the world. Just a year after the Royal Canadian Mint created the Big Maple Leaf, the Gold Kangaroo, a 1-ton gold coin, was minted in Australia in 2011. It measures 80 centimeters in diameter and 12 centimeters thick. The Big Maple Leaf may be the second largest coin ever minted, but at least we have one heck of a crazy story to tell about it. And I would like to thank a very special Canadian for encouraging me to share this episode, Mr. Deadpool himself, Ryan Reynolds. This show is researched, produced, and written by me, Craig Baird, with the help of Dila Velasquez. Audio production and design by Rosalind Kufor. If this is your first time listening and you like what you heard, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review to help other people find these amazing stories. And there are so many for you to sink your teeth into. If you enjoy this podcast, then please check out my other podcasts, From John to Justin, Canada, A Yearly Journey, Pucks and Cups, and Canada's Great War. We love hearing from you, so if you have a show topic you want me to cover, email me at craig@canadaehx.com. Or stop by my website and social media. I'll include all of those in my show notes. Until next time, I'm Craig Baird, and this is Canadian History X.